Inravio.com.
Hello again, everybody. This is Joe Larson, and you're watching the 5 Off 5 On Racing Show live from New York. Welcome to another night of race talk. A lot of stuff going on in the racing community and the racing world. And unfortunately, we start off with a tragic note. It seems like this is happening more often than not. David Steele, 42 years old, was killed in a sprint car crash this Saturday racing at DeSoto Speedway in Florida. A versatile driver, a veteran of many racing series, very experienced, and one of those guys who touched everybody. Steele made his name racing open-wheel cars in the Florida state before moving to the Midwest and finding success in USAC. From there, he went on to race in the Indy Car Series, the NASCAR Xfinity Series, before returning to his short track roots on the short tracks of the dirts, and also racing in ARCA. He had numerous victories in USAC sprint cars and Silver Crown cars, with back-to-back championships in the Silver Crown Series in 2004, 2005. He's 14th in all-time USAC wins list with 60. His 16 Silver Crown wins rank him third all-time. David Steele, 42, will be missed by the racing community. Keep David Steele and his family in your prayers, as we're all racers, we're all into racing, and we know how much it hurts when we lose not only a fellow competitor, whether you're a fan, whether you're a friend, where you just go to watch them race, it touches you. And in my career as an official, I witnessed some of those tragedies, and it stays with you. And you wonder what could have been different, what could have changed, what got that driver into that position on that day. And you know, and my mom put it to me the best. She said, son, when your time is up, your time is up. No matter what you're doing, whether you're racing a sprint car, racing a modified, racing in a NASCAR series somewhere, or driving down the freeway, or in bed sleeping, when your number's called, it's called. Rest in peace, David Steele. There's a lot of racing going on in that place we call heaven. Anyway, yes, a lot of stuff was going on with Danica Patrick again. Danica Patrick seems to be in the news a lot lately. Danica Patrick is very upset about an incident that happened in Phoenix a couple of weeks ago. See, Danica is very upset because she's fuming over the Austin Dillon Cole Custer battle at Phoenix in the Xfinity event there that weekend. Dillon was spun by Custer late in the race, and Dillon retaliated by forcing Custer into the wall. NASCAR announced there would be no penalties or fines assessed to Dillon because let the boys have at it. Well, in 2015, Danica Patrick was fined a substantial amount of money when she retaliated against David Gilliland at the Martinsville Speedway. She wants her money back. Since 2008, fine money in NASCAR goes to the NASCAR Foundation and their initiatives. Before that, the NASCAR fine money went into the illustrious Point Fund, where at the end of the year, the drivers share in the Point Fund money, with the winner taking home 20% of the Point Fund money. So the way that worked, and I could kind of go down a little bit, the Point Fund is set up in, whether it's the NASCAR Wheel and All-American Weekly Series, or it's Campbell World Truck Series, Cup, Xfinity, any NASCAR series, the way the Point Fund is structured, what they did is this. The winner's share was 20%, and then it gets broken down to the top 20. Now it's the top 15, where the last, or the top 20 guy, or the 20th guy, gets 2% of the Point Fund money. And yes, there are new glasses. I call these my Walter Cronkite glasses. But in 2008, a lot of the teams said, look, I'll pay the fine, but I want to donate it somewhere. They didn't want to give it to NASCAR. So it was determined that, hey, the NASCAR Foundation helps a lot of people, a lot of initiatives going on with the NASCAR Foundation. A lot of groups and organizations had the opportunity to reap the benefits of the fine money. And you know what happens? You make the check out to that foundation. It's kind of like a write-off to pay that fine. Now, you still got to pay. It's a bittersweet, situation, but, Danica Patrick is making news. She should be keeping a low profile. She has the situation going on at Nature's Bakery and the lawsuit that's going on there. She doesn't know where she's going to be driving next year because, let's face it, she's not making it happen. She could qualify well. That she can do. But you know what? It's in the race. Anybody could go fast by themselves. But now you have 39 or other teams or drivers, 38, some weeks, 40 others, all racing against you, with you, bumping and beating and banging, and that's where she falters. Danica Patrick's background was Indy cars. Indy cars don't touch, because when they do touch, it's not pretty. She wasn't used to that, and I don't think she ever fully acclimated herself to the rough and tumble world of NASCAR. Yes, NASCAR needs a female. NASCAR needs to get the female fan involved with the races. NASCAR needs these young girls to look up to Danica and say, oh, I want to be a race car driver too. And in the beginning, it sounded really good. She's not fulfilling. She never got better, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, I'm not judging her. And people say, well, you weren't that good. I'm not a race car driver anymore. I report this stuff. So, when you look at this person, first of all, NASCAR's not giving her back her money. And secondly, the way NASCAR operates, you don't want to trash talk NASCAR, especially when you're still involved in the game. Remember, it's NASCAR's sandbox, and it's their sand. They let you bring your toys and play with it. And if you bring toys that are illegal, they take your toys away. NASCAR doesn't fool around. NASCAR does not fool around. And when you look at that, NASCAR wants wooden soldiers. They want people to come in, the drivers, the teams, they want perfect wooden soldiers to follow that thing they call a rule book. They want all the competitors, anybody that holds that little NASCAR card that says licensed member, whether you're in a weekly series or the top echelon, they want you to represent the sport in a way that makes them look good. They don't want us to have fans or potential sponsors saying, we don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want a person like that. This Kyle Busch thing, his sponsors are not happy with what happened that day. They're not happy with that fight that happened at Phoenix. They are upset about that because that's not the image they want to portray. See, it's all about image. It's all about image. And when you think about it, the image has to be milk and cookies, hot dogs, apple pie, that kind of stuff. They don't want the way, you go back to the old days in the 50s and the early 60s, guys like, Marvin Pouch, the Flock brothers, those guys wouldn't make it today because of their rough and tumble appearance, the way they looked. Those guys were different, and I'm not saying that the men and women who compete in racing today are better or worse than the guys and gals that competed in the early years. It was a whole different structure. It was a whole different, that's the word I'm looking for, genre, because the guys back in those, think about these guys. They got into stock cars, because they were called stock cars. They got into these cars that somebody took out of a showroom at the dealership down the road, and you look at a rule book from, I just happened to see something in a rule book from like the early years, and it said the headlights needed to be taped up. The doors needed to be strapped, and some guys would take their belt off and strap the doors, roll down the windows, strap the doors. It had a bench seat, and all the knobs on the dashboard and everything, it was stock. And when those things wrecked, they wrecked bad. And when you wreck bad, you get hurt. And a lot of guys were getting hurt back in those days. A lot of guys were getting hurt. You know, gas tanks were exploding, gas all over the place. You look at some of the early pit stops, especially when they show the Wood brothers, how they evolved pit stop strategies, where the old license plate frame, they'd pull into a pit stop, and somebody would actually hold down the license plate frame as they're pouring gas in. There was none of this quick release stuff in it like we have today. And all of a sudden they realized that can't be safe. We got to change this. And over the years, things in regards to the cars changed. You know, when fire suits came into existence in the early 60s and mid 60s, when it became mandatory, the old timers couldn't stand the fire suits. It made them too hot. It was too hot. They'd get their t-shirt, roll up the sleeve, and go race them. Just like the early days of sprint cars and midgets in the 30s and 40s. They wore a leather cap for a helmet. Similar to, and in most cases, exactly like the ones that fighter bombers used back in the early days of the war in WW2. You know, and all of a sudden they realized that wasn't working. Then they had these big heavy helmets that, you know, like the soldiers wore in the war, these big heavy steel, that, you know, after you're doing this for a couple hours, your neck hurt. The evolution of the safety. And we're going to dedicate a show to the safety of racing and how it evolved over the years. And it did, 22 figure, you're 100% correct. You know, when I think about that, there's a bar, they call it the petty bar. And it used to be the windshield was totally open. You had your bars coming down here and into the A post, and you had one by the B post, and there was door bars. But there was nothing in the windshield, and a tire came through the windshield and struck Richard Petty. And NASCAR decided, whoa, we need to put a bar there. We can't have tires going through the windshield. Something that they never thought of. So they made that bar, you know, and there was an Earnhardt bar. They added a bar in the roll cage by the door. And every bar has a number and a letter. And it was a 7A bar, which was the one just right by your shoulder. And then they added a 7B bar here because there was too much of an opening. Too much of an opening. And Dan McTavish, due to his tragedy in Daytona, a guy out of New Jersey, racing in the Cup Series way back in the mid-60s, was hit so violently that the chassis ripped right at the firewall because there were no bars to hold it all together. And I'll never forget it. I was a little kid. I remember watching it on the news, and they kept saying, you know, this is a violent wreck. Please judge if your children are watching. And I know my dad hated racing, and he wanted me to see this so he could see what happens if you get killed. And I remember seeing the guy just slumped in the seat. The dashboard, the firewall was all gone, and he was violently hit. So all of a sudden, the NASCAR engineers at the time decided, whoa, we need to attach the mainframe of the car to the front of the car so that could never happen. The tragedies that happen. You know, it's just like, and I hate to say it so soon, but John Blewett III, his death from injuries had to do because the rear bumper went through the window net and hit him in the head. And now they put a bar so that cannot happen. And I always wondered, one of the things that I would do when I was involved with NASCAR, I tried to always be proactive. And I can remember saying, you know, we need a quick release roof in these modifieds. Because the way the cars are set up in a modified, if you ever sat in one, there's not a lot of room to get out. There's one way out, and it's through the driver's window on the driver's side, and it's only 14 inches, 13 and a half is the minimum, but we'll say 14 inches to get out. Now, a big guy like me, and I'm not like a big guy, but a guy like me has trouble getting out. I can get in real easy. But getting out, and you got a picture now, you're in a wreck, you're all messed up, the birds and chirping in your brain, and now you're like, okay, oh yeah, I got to get out. And then it's a struggle to get out. And then the track group, you want to drag you out. They don't even know if you got broken bones on it, so they pull you out. And I always said that just like the window net, it used to be the window nets were a pain in the neck when they first came out to hook up. And sometimes the way they were set up, they were only on a little hook, and you took a hard enough hit, that the window net would pop off. And the window net came into play because Richard Petty had a violent wreck, I believe, at Darlington, where his arm was flopping outside the window. So now you had to keep the guy's arm in. So they made window nuts. So anyway, you know, when you look at those things in the quick release, so I on a piece of paper drew out a quick release hatch in the roof of a modified. Because if the driver goes into the wall, driver's side first, they got to cut something to get him out. You're not getting out through the passenger side because you can rest your elbow on the I'll call it the floorboard because there's nothing else. You have 2 MSD boxes. You have fire extinguisher stuff. You're not getting out that side. So I said, you know what? You take your steering wheel off, put it on the dash, quick release, roof pops up, you stand up, you're out of the car. NASCAR told me that was ridiculous, that I was starting to sound like a driver. Okay, so are we going to wait until the driver can't get out of his car before we do something like that, especially in a modified? Especially in a modified. And I can remember going to what is now known Bethel Motor Speedway up in New York, upstate New York, and when it was White Lake Speedway, and there was this guy, he was like huge. And I'm looking, I'm like, how does he get in that car? Better yet, how does he get out? Next thing I know, it's time to go racing. I'm going to watch this. I'm sitting back. Let's watch this. All of a sudden, the roof's on a hinge. It comes back, and he lays down on the ground. Now, I didn't realize he's laying on a backboard. I'm like, all of a sudden, this crew picks him up. 4 guys, they pick up the backboard. They straighten it up. They get over the roof of the car, and they stand him in. They unstrap him, and he slid into his seat. Now, I'm like, wait a minute. I don't believe I just saw this. I want to see this guy get out. So he pulls in after the race, and basically what they did is they put the backboard on his back, they strapped under his arms, and 4 guys pulled him out. I was like, that's amazing. That's a good idea. And they're saying, yeah, a lot of people just watch the races for the crashes. I remember when I was a kid going to Freeport Speedway on Long Island, you know, it was a wreck-free night, and I remember this because I'm 6, 7 years old. I want to see wrecks too. And I remember this one guy goes, oh, that's it. I'm not coming back here. I'm going to Islip. Those figure 8 guys crash all the time. Wanted to see the crashes. You know, that's not what it's like. If you've ever been involved with one of those things, they're not fun. They're not fun when you're in a crash. But you know, the fans, just like the Demolition Derby, you could pack the house if you're having a Demolition Derby. Pack the house because people want to see crashes. And if you ran the Demolition Derby first, people would leave. They wouldn't stay for the rest of the show. They just wouldn't. Anyway, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we got a couple of things to talk about. NASCAR versus dirt when we come back.
Hey, this is Chris Les Jake, and if Inravio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
Yeah, welcome back. You know, it's like I'm just looking in the chat room. That 22 figure would say that, you know, he was a big guy, but he got into his, you know, but he had that big Camaro. And if you remember the Camaros back in the day, they had those big doors and big wide windows, you know. Me, I barely fit in my car. After I was done banging through the gears, I had to put my left foot under my knee because there was no room for it. Because the car that I drove at Riverhead, the first car I drove at Riverhead, was built for the late Bobby Lane. And he was a tiny little guy. And not that I'm a big guy, you know, I'm not tall, but, you know, I'm like 5'10", and at the time I was around 200 pounds, but all the weight was from the waist up. And I had trouble getting in and out of the car, and even trying to shift it because I threw it into high gear. I would hit my knuckles on the bar. Oh, it was nasty. But yeah, Bill, we had some fun in those days. And you know, it's funny, and, you know, 22 Figure Eight's talking about, you know, he only had one crew guy. And if I was lucky, I had one crew guy. And sometimes I had none because they couldn't get off from work or they didn't have the money to go, whatever. And you're not doing it without a crew. You're just not doing it without a crew. Anyway, yeah, I was dirt track racing, asphalt racing, NASCAR versus the dirt guys. Well, dirt track racing versus NASCAR. Ah, yes. According to Shane Walter of racingnews.com, NASCAR is out of gas, in his opinion. Years ago, NASCAR tossed dirt racing away. If you remember years ago, there was a lot of NASCAR events on dirt, and they got rid of it. And they took the fans with them. The fans followed NASCAR. We're going to go to asphalt racing. It's cleaner, it's nicer, all that good stuff. Well, racingnews.com went on to say that NASCAR is running backwards, adding that in 3 years, they feel dirt track racing could be the largest form of motorsports in America. NASCAR fans are leaving in droves. NASCAR fans have given up hope that NASCAR will fix its problems and have zero faith in its current leader, Brian France. NASCAR fans also feel that NASCAR has done very little to fix its problems and are only concerned about putting money in their own pockets. Now understand that these venues that they race at, NASCAR, the company NASCAR, does not own these venues. Some are owned by International Speedway Corp, which has the same people on the board as NASCAR. Some are owned by Speedway Motorsports, which is Bruton Smith's group, and there's still a handful of tracks that are owned by individual people that I'm sure NASCAR and Speedway Motorsports are trying to take over. Of the 39 NASCAR Cup tracks in 2016 TV viewership, 30 saw significant drops in viewership. Atlanta, Georgia, they just ran there a couple weeks ago. 2015, the event drew 9.5 million TV viewers. The same race in 2016 only saw 6.8 million viewers. That's almost a 30% drop in viewership. And when you're talking millions of people, you're talking, you know, almost 3 million less people watched that event, that race, the same period of time. NASCAR's race at Eldora, a dirt track owned by Tony Stewart, was the best move NASCAR made in years, according to Shane Walters. Because people flock to it. Seating-wise, it doesn't hold the hundreds of thousands of fans as does a Daytona, a Bristol, a Martinsville, a Talladega. But when you look at that, when you look at from a TV point and you're watching a race and you see a lot of empty seats and you see banners on the backstretch over this whole entire sections, and then you look at a dirt race, not only is every seat taken, they're standing 4 deep in the corners because they're into it. It used to be NASCAR would announce the attendance. Sometime during the race, they'd say, hey, we have 223,415 people here. When attendance started dropping, NASCAR told TV, we're not announcing the attendance. And it's funny, why would they not do that? Think of other sports. The attendance is listed. You go to look at the baseball's box scores, and it'll tell you the attendance: 52,337, 12,022. They announce it. They put it in there. And one of the things that a lot of people understand, some of those empty seats are paid for. Don't get me wrong. All right, they're paid for. The people didn't show up for whatever reason. They couldn't afford the flight. They couldn't get off from work. They couldn't get a hotel. They couldn't get somebody to watch the dog. Whatever the case was, they didn't show up because you got to buy those seats for NASCAR events a year ahead. And I know I've said this a dozen times, maybe more. I went to Daytona a lot of years in a row for the 500. When I say a lot of years, and probably from like the mid-90s to almost, I'm going to say the last time I went was like 2011, 12. And the cost kept going up and up and up and up. So I'd go to the event because I had a package, because that's another thing that they made us do, Daytona Speedway, is you had to buy a package. And a lot of people would only want to go to the Cup race on Sunday. And the place was empty the rest of the weekend. So you had to buy a package. My package was expensive. And I got tired of it. Why am I doing this? So anyway, I go, I pay the money, whatever. I get home, because I'd spend a week at Speed Weeks, actually like 10 days. And then I'd spend the rest of the time in Orlando. My kids go see Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and whoever else they want to see. You know, Shamu the whale, whatever we did. And I'd go home, and my brother-in-law picked up my mail for 2.5 weeks, and I'd go through, and here's my bill for next year. And on that bill, it said, payment due in 30 days, or we're going to give you tickets away. So they sit on not only my money, and my package was about $1,500. Not only did they sit on my money, but 200,000 other people, say 100,000 other people, we'll say $1,000. So they're sitting on $20 million in the bank for 11 months. That's one event. Just saying. But anyway, NASCAR tracks across the country are removing seats. Look at Daytona. They removed all the seats out of the backstretch. Yes, they added a tier in the front stretch, and that's for future use. That isn't for racing. Trust me when I tell you. The Jacksonville Jaguars are going to end up moving to Daytona, and they're going to play football on the triover grass. Mark my words. So all these seats, all these tracks are taking seats away, and they're selling them to dirt venues. Imagine that. Because they have overflow crowds. They have nowhere to put the people. People got turned away at Eldora. There was no room for them. Think of that. It's a dirt race. Dirt race. They've done that. They've taken these seats down, just like at Nazareth. Nazareth Speedway, a beautiful facility. I worked at the time the Nationwide Series events there a couple of years in a row. And I remember looking at this beautiful facility in the middle of nowhere, outside of Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I think it had like 7 turns. And Rick Fuller, a former NASCAR Wheeler Modified Tour champion, took me out on the racetrack. Because what I had to do is I had to have a meeting with the rookies. It was anybody their first year racing or anybody who never raced that track. I had to have a meeting with these guys and explain the track to them. I'm like, I never came here. Ricky Fuller says, I'll never forget this. He goes, the car you're here with, is that your car or is it a rental? It's a rental. Let's go. And we're doing laps in this rental car. I'm like, we're going to hit the wall. And he hit this one bump on one of the turns, and the car lifted up. I mean, because when it came, I thought it was just a spring, but then the doom when it landed. And I'm like, how am I going to explain this to Avis when I'm done? And Ricky says, you got to tell these kids, they got to hit that. It was like a smoothed up curve with red stripes on it. Because if they don't hit that, when you come off this corner, you're going to hit this wall. And we were like, if I would have put my hand out the window, I would have touched it. Beautiful facility, owned by Roger Penske. NASCAR needed to get him because Roger Penske had this idea, let me be like Bruton Smith and stop buying racetracks and getting dates. So they buy it from him, and they take the grandstands down. and put them somewhere else. But anyway, getting off a little tangent here, the dirt racing, I had gone to Volusia, and all the years I went to Speed Weeks, I went to Volusia once or twice. The first time I wasn't into it, it was just dust and sweat. I spent most of the race like this. I went to New Egypt once with my kids when they were small, and I watched a violent wreck there, and it was like, my kids they were filthy. My daughter Kerry was taking the rubber that was going into the grandstand, and she made this big rubber ball out of mud and tire compound chemicals and stuff. It couldn't have been healthy. And then I started going and looking at it from a different point when I started reporting when I went to New Egypt. And I'm sitting there, and even when I was with the company, when I was selling racewear, I can remember delivering racewear, uniforms, T-shirts, whatever, to a late model dirt driver, Earl Pearson. And I went there with his stuff, because these guys finance the racing from selling their shirts. Think about it, you sell 100 shirts at $20, and you got whatever deal they were on. Think about it, you covered your fuel and your tires for the night. Well, anyway, I get there, and he goes, all right, I'll be right back, I gotta go to practice. 4 laps later, he pulls in. I said, everything right? Yeah, practice is over. Practice is over? He goes, yeah. If I can't tell what's wrong with my car in 4 laps, I shouldn't be driving it. And dirt track racing is different, because they do some like, they just drive around, they gotta push the fluid down into the dirt. But by the end of the night, it's except on the outer edges, it's harder than asphalt anyway. But anyway, they're racing for like $50,000 to win. And I'm like, on this level? And they're racing 60, 70 times a year. And I'm like, where does this money come from? It's not from the 200,000 people in the grandstands, because the venues they race at don't have that many seats. Dirt track racing is going to be big. And I think if they have the Lucas series and they have the DIRT series, if those series ever went together, they'd be a force to be reckoned with. And NASCAR might have a run for its money. See, like any great company, and a lot of people don't like NASCAR, and they blame NASCAR for a lot of stuff that isn't their fault. A lot of great companies, especially when you're talking about third generation, they were never hungry. They never got their hands dirty. And as long as their checks are clearing and their toys are paid for, they really don't care. They really don't care. And I don't, I've met Brian fans on a couple of occasions. I never really had a deep conversation with him. I had some deep conversations with Bill France Jr. talking about racing. I met him numerous times, but and you can't really talk to Brian fans because he's not in the garage. He's not rubbing elbows with the team owners, the drivers, the crew chiefs. If he was in the mall shopping and one of the drivers walked past him, he wouldn't know who they were unless they had their fire suit. And even then, he'd have to look for the name on the belt somewhere. NASCAR is in trouble. They're still making money. They're making money hand over fist, don't get me wrong. But their product is dwindling. Their product is dwindling. And with all this decline in viewership, what's going to happen is this. Sponsorship is going to back off. Sponsorship of the team is going to back off. And then you're in trouble. We'll be right back.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com. The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Inravio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Inravio.com.
Hi, my name is Aaron from Real Big Fish,
And I'm Ed from Real Big Fish.
and you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Hey, the top two series, the Xfinity and the Cup Series, was at Fontana, California for racing this weekend. And in the Xfinity Series, we had Kyle Larson, the winner, with Joey Logano second from the pole. Kyle Busch third. Eric Jones was fourth. Then followed by William Byron in fifth. Darrell Wallace Jr., another sixth-place finish. Elliott Sadler seventh. Brennan Poole was eighth. Justin Allgaier ninth, and Ty Dillon rounding out the top 10. The points, the way they look right now, is Elliott Sadler is the point leader with a 17-point advantage over William Byron. Justin Allgaier is third in the points, followed by Ryan Reed. And Darrell Wallace Jr., with those string of sixth-place finishes, is rounding out the top 5. The next event for the Xfinity Series will be at the Texas Motor Speedway, obviously in Texas. Sprint Cup Series, Kyle Larson, he pulled it off. He swept Fontana. And he did this Cups race from the pole, winning that. Brad Keselowski finished second after an early skirmish with damage in his rear quarters and rear bumpers taped on. Finished second. Kurt Boyer was third. He's having an awesome season. Martin Truex Jr. was fourth. Joey Logano was fifth. Jamie McMurray sixth. Ryan Blaney seventh. Clinton Boyer was eighth. Kevin Harvick ninth. And Kyle Busch rounding out the top 10. One special thing happened at this race is Dale Earnhardt Jr. started his 600th career Cup race, finishing 16th. And you know, it's 600 starts. Now, you would think that's a lot of starts, and it is. That puts him 26th on the all-time start list. He had passed, let's see, 2 more starts. He'll pass Jimmy Hilton, I'm sorry, and in 16 more starts, he'll tie Tony Stewart and Matt Kenseth with 619. Now, I'm sure you can all guess who's the leader in all-time starts in the Cup Series, and that would be Richard Petty with 1,185 Sprint Cup victories, and he is the only driver in the 600 club to win his 600th event, his career start. So that's pretty nice. Now, there's really nobody close to breaking that record. That's one of those records I think is going to be unbreakable. Of course, now think about this. Back in Richard Petty's day, they ran 50 to 60 events a year. Sometimes they raced 2 races a week. Now they're racing 36 races. Throw in the duels, throw in the what do they call them? The All-Star race. Throw in the shootout the week before the Daytona. So 39 races. Here's what we got. Ricky Rudd is second with 906, followed by Terry Labonte with 890. Dave Marcus. Remember Dave Marcus? He wore wingtip shoes when he was driving, and they were SFI approved towards the end. He has 883. Mark Martin, 882. He's 5th place. Kyle Petty, which this kind of surprised me. I knew he was around for a long time, but I didn't know he had 829 career starts. Bill Elliott, awesome Bill from Dawsonville, 828 starts. Old DW, Darrell Waltrip, 809. Jeff Gordon, 805. Michael Waltrip, 784 for 10th place. Old Ken Schrader, who still shows his head once in a while, 763. Sterling Marling, 748. And then we have Dale Earnhardt Jr. So he has a long way to go with that. And then we have James Hilton with 602. And actually, Bobby Labonte with 729. I'm sorry, Bobby Allison with 718, whose career cut short from head trauma. Rusty Wallace, 706, who, in my opinion, walked away from racing when he was in his prime. I think he had a few more races left in his belt there. Buddy Baker, 699 career starts. Jeff Burton, 695. He's been gone a long time. Dale Sr., whose life was cut short, 676. Dale Jarrett, 668. Joe Nemechek, often known as Front Row Joe, could get the pole but couldn't win these races, 667. J.D. McDuffie, that guy's like 1,000,000 years old, 653 starts. Buck Baker, 633. Matt Kenseth, 619. Tony Stewart, 618. And I said earlier, James Hilton with 602. So that's a lot of racing. And considering the modern era since the 70s, they're only racing like 36 racers a year. So that's 20 years of racing to get to 600 starts. And you know what? I look back, I was like, I remember when he started as a kid. I remember winning the All-Star race as a rookie. I remember his dad coming up to him, rubbing his head, you know. It's all good. And you know, and that's right, you know, 22 figures say today's drivers are so well paid that there's no reason to race into the late 50s. And I watched an interview with Dale Earnhardt Jr. Just today I watched, in fact. And he was talking about the significance of 600 starts. And he said, you know, I always wanted to be a racer. I always wanted to race. And I did everything I could to become a race car driver. And he said, and I only wanted to do it. I only wanted to race long enough to put some money away so I didn't have to work a full-time job. Incredible. Incredible. You know, 600 starts at Fontana. And I'm going to say it again. He only wanted to race long enough so he didn't have to work a real job. I'm thinking there's people that work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. They couldn't do what some of these race car drivers do. They couldn't do it. They couldn't. They couldn't. And as 22 figure eight says, you know, these guys are retiring at such an early age. You know, retiring in their early 30s. And the difference between the now competitor and the competitor from the 50s, 60s, 70s, they had to do good that week in their race car so they could pay their bills. There was no contracts. It was all a handshake. All right, you can run my car now. And then sponsors came into the picture. And all of a sudden, there's all of this stuff with the way things look and the way things are and deals. And you know, J.D. McDuffie, that's correct, because he was killed at Watkins Glen. He was like 1,000,000 years old. But his death gave us the bus stop at Watkins Glen. And I worked I worked the Cup race at Watkins Glen. And I was never there. I never went to Watkins Glen. And when you go into the hauler and you get your job assignment for the race, I'm praying that I'm not on pit road, because I wasn't comfortable enough or confident enough to work pit road with a Cup guy. Can you imagine? I'd be chewed up on those guys. And they said, all right, Joe, and I'm looking, I'm like, the bus stop? Are they sending me home? So everybody laughed. I said, what, are you guys sending me home? I got to get the bus stop? No, you got the bus stop. You got to watch guys that blow through it, and then when they have to stop, you have to let us know they stop. And where is it? Oh, it's over there. I'm like, it's like 1,000,000 miles away. So one of the teams had like 4 spotters on their golf cart. And I said, you guys going to the bus stop? Yeah. You have room for me? Hop on. And it was the most fun I had working a Cup race. I was working the bus stop at Watkins Glen. But anyway, 600 starts. Congratulations, Dale Earnhardt Jr. It's hopefully, you know, you have another few more seasons left. Maybe you'll get 700 starts. Who knows? 3 years will give it to you. 3 years. Anyway, we're going to take a break. When we come back, there's some things I want to talk about when we come back.
Hey, I'm Raul Panther.
And I'm Commander B. Hawkins.
And I'm Russ Weller. We're some of the proto men. If we see you without this bracelet, You get punched in the but if you have this bracelet from Inravio.com, you can win $100.
Put one of these on, or else. Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
Welcome back. I'm having fun today. Anyway, the NASCAR Wheel In Modified Tour will be at the Thompson Motorsports Park this weekend for their second race of the year. They started their season at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I looked at the entry list today and I was disappointed. Now it doesn't take a lot. I mean, I'm not one of those guys that gets disappointed about stuff, but 29 cars are entered as of 5 o'clock today. Now I worked that event. I've worked that event probably 14 times. And in the beginning of my illustrious tour career, we were sending home 15 to 20 cars and starting like 36. This is what you could consider a home track to the modified tour, that in Stafford. If you can't get a car count at those two venues, it's time to take a look at what's wrong. 29 cars. Everybody's in the show. Everybody's in. Nobody's going home. There's going to be people on an event that should not be in the event. And, you know, back in the day, 0.3 of a second was the difference between who started the race and who went home. There's something wrong. I don't know if it's money, lack of sponsorship, the lower payout that this race used to pay, or the leadership of the series. And you know, when you look at all four of those things, it's probably a combination of the two, but think about it. Think about in almost any other sport, any other professional sport. When the product isn't as good as it used to be, who goes? The leadership. Infuse new blood, new people. But the problem is, NASCAR, especially at this level, wants wooden soldiers. I'm going to stop short of saying puppets, because that wouldn't be right. They can't make decisions. You ask a question, and I'm saying this, and not in a bad way. I'm saying this as constructive criticism. And I'm going to tell you something. I watched a team member, and I'm going to use my phone. He's sitting there like this, and the team member, the crew guy goes, "Hey, what about blah, 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 blah?" This is what the guy did. "Oh, they tell me that, blee, 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 blee." You're the series director. Off the top of your head, you should have that answer. When your technical director is asked a question by a team about something technical, out comes the rule book. You're the technical guy. You should know that. And what's happening is teams are getting frustrated, and like 22 figures, other mod tours are getting their cars. In fact, other mod tours are forming and getting full fields, if not more. can remember the race here on Long Island at Riverhead for the Tour was the highest paying race per mile. It was $6,000 to win. 200 laps at Riverhead is 50 miles. Thompson, Stafford, $7,000, $8,000 payouts. New Hampshire, $13,000, $14,000 payouts. They're not getting that kind of money anymore. So you know what, as a businessman, if you approach your race team as a business, which at that level they're starting to do a little bit, you got to look at it. Is it cost effective for me to race this race? Or can I just go with my brother-in-law and go race this other series where you don't need a crew and there's no pit stops? You're only allowed 4 tires. I got to buy 10? What do you mean I got to buy 10? I got to buy 10? Imagine going to the supermarket and you get to the checkout counter. You only have 1 dozen eggs? You have to buy 5. What do you mean? I don't need 5. That's too bad. You got to buy 5. All right. You go to the beer distributor? Well, maybe that would work in your advantage. But, you know, you go to a bakery, you go to the bagel store. I'll take a dozen bagels. No, you're going to take 3 dozen. How do they get away with that? Yeah, anyway. But there'll be a Thompson. It'll be interesting to see how that event flows out. It was always called the Icebreaker. And I believe Thompson's still calling it the Icebreaker because it's their first event. And it's the Tour's second, as I said. The K&M Pro Series, they will be back in action April 8th at the Greenville Pickens Speedway in South Carolina. So it's going to start getting busy. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about and reported about Ryan Partridge. Ryan Partridge, 3-time NASCAR K&M Pro Series West winner and former champion, missed the first event due to paperwork issues. Paperwork issues. And I knew there was more to it than that. I just knew it there was. Well, Partridge will be forced to miss the entire 2017 season due to an inconclusive drug test. Partridge, 28, of Pancho, Cucamonga, California, did not fail the drug test. And I want to make that perfectly clear. He did not fail his drug test, which all competitors have to take. But the timing of the drug test was inconclusive. So the reading of the results was inconclusive, which meant he had to take another one. And he was unable to do that in time to compete in the first 2 events because you have to ask for the kit, they send it to you, you have to go to the doctor, take the test, it gets sent to the lab, and it takes time. He was going for a championship. You miss 2-3 races, your championship hopes are null and void. It isn't happening. So what he's elected to do is, as he put it in his press release, concentrate on some family issues. Now a drug test, inconclusive. What does that mean? They didn't find what they were looking for, maybe, or something came up that didn't look right and you needed another test. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a phlebotomist, I'm not nothing. I'm just a guy that talks about racing. And NASCAR started this drug testing, and not only do they do the drivers, crew chiefs, crew members, also the officials. And in my 18 years as a tour official, for whatever reason, I was never asked, not that I had anything to worry about, but there was people that I worked with that were asked sometimes every week. NASCAR takes that seriously, as does the DOT with drivers on the highways, drug testing, you know. And yeah, 23 years, you can miss a half a season in Cup and still win the championship. Ain't that the truth? But they do this stuff, and there's provisions for these NASCAR members if they do come up failing their drug test, where they could go get the necessary help, go to rehab, whatever the case is. Sometimes it's just a misunderstanding. You took this, it was prescribed by the doctor, but and there's so many drugs that go by this. It's the same exact drug with different names, and that wasn't on the do not take list, but it has the same ramifications of one that does, and it's just one of those things. And I kind of feel sorry for the guy, but he also waited to the 11th hour to do this, and I'm not saying this is the case with him, but I know people who, for instance, drive a school bus, and they party all summer long. Then it comes, oh wait, it's Labor Day weekend's gonna be next, and all of a sudden they're like, perfect little soldiers and goody two-shoes and don't partake in whatever they did because it needs to run out of their system. Again, I'm not a chemist. I'm not into this stuff. I don't understand how some of it even works, but I know that there's ways to detox yourself, and then once they pass that first one and they're good to go, and they're going to be randomly tested, but they partied all summer. And I don't hold that against anybody. I really don't. Everybody does what they want to do, and there's things that I do that people think are crazy, but that's okay. But they made a big thing out of this, and I'm sure that Ryan Partridge knew when he missed those events what the deal was. And it made it to seem like NASCAR, and Randy, buddy Randy, we worked at K&N and some Xfinity races together years ago, and on social media he put there's more to it than this, and I agreed. There was more to it. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, you're going to have a problem. And this is one of the things that I applaud NASCAR on. I would not want to be driving my race car against somebody that's either high or stoned. And I did in my day. Not that I drove high, but I raced with guys who were, and there was no reason with them. There was no, they thought they were out there to just wreck people sometimes. And I remember a driver came to the racetrack one time, and his eyes were glowing like he just came out of the Amityville Horror House. And I brought him in the office, and I said, what are you doing? What are you taking? Oh, I'm good. Are you stoned? No, I'm good. You taking, smoking any stuff? No, we're all good. I said, well, according to the rule book, I could drug test you right now. Now, if you just tell me that you're going to withdraw and go home, we're all good. But if I give you the cup to leave some stuff in there, and you're not good, you're probably not going to be racing for a long time. No, I'm good. You do what you got to do. And next thing I know that, all the cars in that division were lining up to go racing, and as they were lining up to go racing, his trailer pulled out of the place. I know another guy. He was so high as a kite that he missed. He didn't show up at the racetrack. He thought it was Friday because he started partying on Thursday, and he woke up 2 days later and he thought it was Friday. It was Saturday. So I don't know. I don't understand this. I really don't. But anyway, it's all good. It's all good. And again, I want to wish my twin girls, Erin and Kerry, a happy birthday again. We had a nice celebration with family and close friends, and it was a surprise. They had no clue, and they thought they were coming to my surprise party because only I would throw myself a surprise party, as my one daughter said. But it was all good, and it's hard to believe my babies are 25. Erin and Kerry, 25 years old, and it was nice. All the kids came except for one who couldn't make it, but it's all good. Anyway, we got to wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your busy schedule to partake in our show tonight. 22 Figure 8. You always make the show interesting and fun. And whatever you have to do this week, please be safe. Please be careful. Remember the anniversary show. It's coming up. So enjoy. Let's prepare for that. And tell somebody you love them. Give them a hug. God bless you all. And hopefully we'll see everybody here next week. Good night, everybody.